All of us here have a set of ideals and goals we want to live by and achieve in order for us to attain a certain level of satisfaction, happiness, and contentment. But how often do we contemplate about the source of our happiness or the source of our contentment? It can stem from various avenues for each person. For some, it could mean academic excellence, while for others, it could be something more personal, like a relationship. The morality of our pursuit for contentment can be tricky, and what I firmly believe is that there is no one correct way of attaining things. So what is your source of contentment? Is it the feeling you get when you play your favorite sport and everything around you seems to stand still? Well, my source is something that is readily available. It is one we take for granted and have been abusing it generation after generation. It is nature, immersing myself in it. Nature that is of a necessity to our existence, the ebb and flow of our life. I want to introduce you to a term called forest bathing. And what forest bathing essentially is just immersing yourself in nature. It could be your national park, it could be your neighborhood park, or even in the woods. It's as simple as that. And it is just not the toing and froing of hippies, but it is actually backed by science. Shinrin-yoku is the Japanese term for forest bathing, and it has taken Japan by storm over the past decade. So much so that there are now over 48 therapy trails in Japan alone. So what is it about forest bathing that has prompted middle-class working people to hike these therapy trails during the weekends? Well, Florence William, in her book, The Nature Fix, highlights the benefits of being out there in nature. She states that nature not only helps us benefit mentally, but actually goes above and beyond to better our immune system. In her book, she talks about the studies done by Yoshifumi Miyazaki, the deputy director of Chiba University's Center for Environment, Health, and Field Sciences. In his book and in his studies, Miyazaki found out that a person's natural killer immune cells, or NK cells, increased by over 45% and remained at 15% higher a month later than when they started their studies in a group of middle-aged businessmen from Tokyo who were in these therapy trails for 3 days. And Florence William has presented us studies that state that this increase could be due to a natural stimuli called phytoncides, which are also known as volatile aromatic substances, which are chemicals released by evergreens amongst many other trees. So we're talking about an increase in almost 50% in a person's natural killer immune cells. This has huge implications on how we think of our relationship with nature and the benefits we can derive from it. It is difficult for me to put into words the effect nature has had on my outlook on life and the way it shapes my personality. And nature for me is something that is very difficult to ascertain, yet its mysticism is something that I yearn for. Greg Child, a mountaineer and an author, once said, "Somewhere between the start of the climb and the summit is the answer to why we climb." And as with him, the hills and the mountains have always been enigmatic to me, in the sense that they have this presence, this mystical working that makes you surrender to the might and awe of the lofty peaks. So in the summer of 2017, I decided to trek to the Mount Everest Base Camp with 3 other friends of mine, and I underwent many life-changing experiences there, but none more than me now willing to change the trajectory of my education and career. So after much contemplation, I decided to pursue a career in conservation efforts in the Himalayas. But as of now, that career is nothing but mere speculation. So this first photo this first photo year was taken 5 days into our trek near a village known as Tukla. And what I absolutely love about this photo is that in the background, you have this humongous mountain that ranges between 6,000 to 7,000 meters in altitude. And it kind of overshadows and overpowers the little lodge that is in front of it that hasn't been used in like decades. It is also the time I was introduced to black and white photography, and I've never looked back since, so much so that most of my profile pictures are now in black and white as well, something my mom is not a fan of. And this second photo year was taken 2 hours actually, away from the base camp. And what you can see in the center is known as the Khumbu Icefall, or the Khumbu Glacier. And finally, after 2 hours and a couple of hundred photos taken, we arrived at the base camp itself. And the base camp contains like a sacred space which has rocks with scriptures scribbled on them that have been wrapped around with hundreds and hundreds of prayer flags that have been laid down by mountaineers as a show of respect to the mountains before they start their climb. And I remember feeling really blissful, knowing that the closest hint of urban civilization was days and days away and thousands of meters below me. So the transformative powers of nature are real and binding. Trekking and hiking in the mountains provide a challenge, not only physically, but spiritually too. It challenges one to delve deeper into unknown territories. And with every small lingering step you take into the unknown, you challenge yourself to question your beliefs, no matter how strong or weak they might be. So with every question comes into existence additional hindrances that prohibit you from moving forward from your constrained visions of life, thought, and perception of everything around you. It is important for us to further this cause, but we can only do that if we make nature more readily accessible to us. And we tend to think of nature as what my professor, Dr. Jennifer Hurst, would refer to as sexy nature. This idea, this notion that nature is all national parks and millions of acres of sublime bliss and serenity. But we need to start to think of nature on a much smaller scale, to actually motivate people to immerse themselves in it. And we can only do that if we bring nature closer to home, urban nature. According to Mother Nature Network, 2018 saw a rise in 8% in public spending on parks in America's 100 largest cities, which cover over 22,760 parks and a population of about 64.5 million people. This is a noble cause to pursue. However, it is sometimes a lot more important to engrave this belief in the mysticism, the spirituality, and the benefits of being out there in nature from an early age. Throughout the world, there have been countless introductions of forest elementary schools, wherein children are not bound by walls, rules, and regulations, but are able to explore their open-air kindergarten, which encourage social interaction, and are able to instill a discovery style of learning as well. And in the summer of 2015, the US government introduced the Every Kid in a Park initiative, which provided all fourth grade students and their families a full year free admission to all national parks and federal lands. So what better way can there be to entice children than by providing them with such opportunities? These initiatives provide us a promise to make us realize that nature and us human beings do not have to exist exclusively, but rather in an all-inclusive manner. Thus, it is the opportune moment for the somewhat functionality of the West to meet and integrate with the mysticism and the spirituality of the East. I want to share with you what I wrote of nature about 1.5 years ago while I was trekking. It says, "To walk on untamed paths with a wanderlust mind, to saunter amongst the tall grasses under the impression of the sky, with mushy mosses below and the spiraling stars above. Some call it a journey, the ones of faith, a pilgrimage. But for the ones void of reasons, it is a walk amongst the dust clouds, out into the unknown and unscathed." Thank you.